Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 22. So just briefly tonight, I wanted to remind you that the 30% discount I've been offering on my website expires at the end of the year. The code is kindness2020, and if you go to the website, there's a little pop-up that will remind you about the discount. So if you're looking to book, make sure you do that before the end of the year because that discount is going away. And then I wanted to remind you that I have a couple songs coming out. I have one coming out December 19th called You Are the Light. And then my first Kirtan, which is a call and response meditation song, is coming out January 7th. If you go to the brand new music page on my website, which is paulataylorenergy.com, you can learn more about Kirtan and preview the songs. At least the art. I don't actually have any music on there, but that may be coming soon, and the songs will be available for download there on their release dates, as well as on the streaming platforms. Okay, this is a tough subject tonight, so bear with me if I get a little flustered. This is when this word perfectionism came to me, I was kind of like, oh, do I have to? Because it's definitely something that I've struggled with. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, whether they're actually aware of it or not. So we're going to talk about perfectionism tonight and then softening our self-judgments. So what is perfectionism? It's kind of seems obvious, but it's the pursuit of perfection. But I would like to add that it's also the pursuit of appearing perfect, because there really is no such thing as perfection. So I think that perfectionism for a lot of us is about trying to appear as though we're perfect or trying to get everything right as much as we can. And I feel like there's a couple different aspects about this that I want to discuss. And as always, I'm going to give some personal examples. And as I said, this is a little bit of a tough subject, so bear with me if I get a little flustered or kind of lost for words here tonight. So the first aspect I wanted to speak about in terms of perfectionism is perfectionism as a defense mechanism. So if you had any kind of difficulty in your childhood, a lot of times appearing perfect is a survival technique. So last week we talked a little bit about armoring, emotional armoring, and you can go back and revisit that. Wind Down Wednesday will be available on my website probably tomorrow, but it's here on Facebook if you'd like to watch it before it gets to the website. And we talked a lot about armoring. I'm not going to go into that much other than to say armoring is kind of a preemptive way of emotionally shielding. So in terms of perfectionism, we try to shield ourselves from judgment by appearing perfect. And the thought is, if I am perfect, I have no weaknesses and therefore no one can hurt me. And this can be emotional armoring. It can also be a physical survival skill. If you were raised in an environment of abuse, then you had to do everything perfectly to avoid setting the person off who abused you. And again, that could be physical, emotional abuse. It could even be sexual abuse. So again, this is a difficult subject, and I'm talking about it in a way that I've never really heard anyone discuss it before. So as always, be gentle with yourself. If we're doing the meditation and things come up, be gentle with yourself. If you have a therapist, you can reach out to your therapist, or you might think about getting into therapy if you feel like you need a professional level of mental help. And I'm also here for coaching if you feel like you just want to bounce some ideas off someone, or if something gets triggered and you want to talk about it from a spiritual perspective. So I always give personal examples, and I want to talk a little bit more about self-judgment, because I feel like what happens in terms of perfectionism as self-judgment is that we internalize these messages that initially come from outside, but eventually we internalize these messages, and we're giving ourselves these messages. We don't have to be judged by anyone else anymore because we've taken over judging for ourselves. And this happens to the point that we're never satisfied. And so I'm going to give this personal example, and this is kind of how this subject came up for me. I was presenting at a women's group last week about music. And I was talking a little bit about my musical journey. I sang a lot as a child. I loved to sing. And what I realized as I was thinking about giving this presentation and trying to quickly sort of sum up my musical experience of losing my voice and then finding my voice again was that as a child, I sang from joy, just pure joy. I loved to sing. Of course, I loved the reaction and when people liked my singing, and then that kind of gets the ego involved. But before that ever happened, I just wanted to make music. And as I got into my teenage years, I developed a lot of body issues. I'm going to talk about that next, and I've talked about that before. And I really had a hard time being seen. I didn't want to stand up in front of people anymore and have them look at me because I felt like they were judging me. And this energetic stagnation, this hiding, actually manifested to the point that I physically lost my voice. I developed nodules on my vocal cords. And it took me years to sing at all. I didn't sing from about age 16 to 21, pretty much at all. And it really took me till my mid-20s to start using my voice at all, even really in private. And one of the things I talked about was coming from this background of classical music, there's such a striving for perfection. Every note has to be perfect. Your sound has to be perfect. You know, people can, what the joke that I make, it's not really a joke. You can get fired for missing a single note in an important performance. And that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's the kind of pressure that you feel. And you internalize that pressure. So even in school, when I wasn't even singing anymore, I was performing on the oboe. My stage fright got worse and worse and worse to the point where I didn't even want to play anymore. And I didn't play. I put my oboe down for probably 15 years. I didn't really sing. And my husband is the one who really kind of lured me out of hiding and got me to sing again with his band. And then what I discovered is that as I was able to soften this need to be perfect, because I'm not in the classical music field anymore, I was able to re-access my connection to joy, to the pure joy of just creating, of creating music, of sharing with an open heart the songs that come to me. And I realized that perfectionism really held me back for so long, that need to pursue perfection and to appear perfect, whether or not I could be or was. It really held back my growth, and it took me a long time to soften into that enough to where now when I perform, I always get nervous. I think that's a normal thing. I get nervous for these Wind Down Wednesdays a little bit as well. I get nervous when I sing. But very quickly, it turns into this expression of joy and this exchange of energy when I'm in front of a live audience and I can feel that the audience is enjoying it. It raises the whole vibration of the space. And for me, that's what music is about now. And that's what performing is about now. So I also want to talk about perfection as a deflection. And what I mean by that is that focusing on perfection allows us to avoid confronting and processing our pain. And this is an area where I am still struggling, and I have spoken about this before, but it always gives me a little bit of a ugh to have to talk about this. But I share this with you because I know even if you can't identify with the exact story I'm telling, the underlying energetic factors here are practically universal. It just may not apply to you in the exact way it applies to me. So I've talked before about my history of disordered eating. It started fairly early. I was starving myself as early as junior high, all the way through college, and I still really struggle with this body image and disordered eating pattern. And this is an interesting thing, especially about eating disorders, but I think about anything that ends up as a deflection. So this may have started as this internalized external messaging. So, we are bombarded with messages from the media, maybe from our families, from our friends, about looking a certain way and appearing a certain way, especially in public. And I kind of came of age in the 90s, and that's when the heroin chic was in, which was basically waif-thin Kate Moss models. And most of us, that's just not attainable for most of us. So trying to attain that level of perfection, what we kind of agreed upon as a society at that time was ideal, was only available to a very small percentage of people. And the rest of us just felt like we were less than all the time. So those external messages get internalized, like I just talked about with my musical journey, and it turns into self-judgment. But actually what happens beyond that is that we talked about distilling a few weeks ago, kind of more in a positive way, but this is also a distillation process. So what happens with disordered eating and a lot of other coping mechanisms that come out of this kind of perfectionism idea is that we have really complex emotional lives. There's a lot of things going on. It's very easy to get overwhelmed. So we distill all of this into one single issue that we can control. And in my case, or in the case of disordered eating, it's eating and exercise patterns. So essentially for me, fat equals failure. That was kind of how I felt. And I still struggle with that. And instead of seeing the rich complexity of who I am and the things I have to offer and the beautiful parts of myself, both inside and outside, when I can tell right away when I'm getting overwhelmed, when there's too much going on, because I instantly start nitpicking my looks. And it's a deflection. So I'm deflecting all this other stuff that I don't want to deal with and think about, and just focusing on something that is simple, that I feel like I can control. But the problem with that is that also stops us from growing. It keeps us in a stagnant state. And so I wrote a blog post a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, about spiritual processing, and I'm going to refer to that again in a minute. But I remember using the phrase in that blog post that we are imperfectly perfect. And I love that phrase so much. It's making me emotional, kind of saying it right now. So we were created by whatever you believe in. I call it the divine. Some people call it God. Maybe it's just this intelligent design that you think of. But we were created as we are for a reason. We were created as we are with a purpose, with a special gift that we're here to share with the world. And we need to open to love and accept that so that we can expand and fulfill our purpose and let go of things like perfectionism, like the need to deflect, like these self-judgments that keep us trapped in this small ego-minded thinking, in this fear mind. We need to step out of fear and into love. And I say that constantly. I'm never going to stop saying that, because at the root of everything that I do, this is what we're doing. We're trying to step out of fear and into love. So how do we do this? How do we deal with this issue that's fairly complex and can be overwhelming, and that, it's so ingrained in us? These patterns start in early childhood. Sometimes I can remember having eating stuff, at a fairly young age. So how do we deal with this? How do we start to work with this? And you may be getting tired of hearing me say this, because I say this almost every week, but the first step is awareness. So we can't change what we can't see. And I say that a lot as well. So noticing our judgments, noticing our self-talk. And I did an episode on self-talk. It was the second or third episode of Wind Down Wednesday. So you can feel free to go back to that episode either on Facebook, or it's on my website or my YouTube page, which is Paula Taylor Energy. And that might help you as you start to do this work. If you feel a lot of stuff coming up during this meditation tonight about self-judgment, go back to self-talk, because self-talk is a representation of our self-judgment. We make the judgment and then we tell ourselves this fallacy, that we are not enough, that something about us is wrong, and we'll never be perfect, and we'll never be good enough. So the judgment comes first, and then the self-talk comes. And then, as always, we want to do this gently. This work that we're going to do tonight, last week I talked about how love softens tension. Love softens everything. So we're going to use love tonight to soften those self-judgments. And then processing. So I mentioned my spiritual processing blog, which is still available on my website if you want to go back and read that. And one of the steps of spiritual processing is processing through the actual body, the physical energetic field, which is within your body and around your body. So you can be aware of something and you can mentally work through it and kind of like, I can understand, I know right here that there's nothing wrong with me, that I am beautiful just the way I am, that I am loved. I understand that mentally, but bringing that into my energetic field and letting that stagnation, that holding of old emotions and old ideas that I'm not good enough, I have to bring that into my field to really integrate that and incorporate it into my life. And that's a process. And so you can read the blog, and that talks about processing. Some of the ways that we can bring awareness into the body is using affirmations. If you've been with me before, you know that we use affirmations fairly often, and I encourage you to say them out loud. And the way that affirmations, for a long time, I thought affirmations didn't work. I thought, oh, this is silly. I kind of thought of that old Saturday Night Live that had, his name was Stuart something. I am good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And it, they kind of made fun of this sort of whole new agey idea of doing affirmations and mirror work, looking at yourself in the mirror. But that is actually really powerful work when you're in that neutral, grounded state. When you're in a state of fear, if you use an affirmation, it's not going to get into your field. It's going to get stuck somewhere in the mental body and kind of just dissipate and never get anywhere. So being in a grounded state, being in a loving, meditative, neutral state, and then saying your affirmations really allows those vibrations to reverberate in your energetic field. And as you repeat that, then you have the opportunity to change those patterns that have created these self-judgments. And then I love music. Music is a great way to move energy into the body. Physical exercise is great. We're not going to do that tonight. But last week I did a little bit of toning, and I've been struggling a little bit since I started these, because in my private work, in my one-on-one sessions, I use a lot of music. I use a Tibetan singing bowl. I use chant sometimes. And when I first started rehearsing these Wind Down Wednesdays, when I did a couple episodes with my family through Zoom and then through Facebook Messenger, that some of the noises don't come through the microphone very well, and I didn't want to distract people. But toning, as I did last week, seems to work really well in this setting. So I'm going to do a little bit of toning tonight at the end of the meditation. If I'm called to, I always go with the flow. But my feeling is that using the toning to seal the session, and you may find yourself as I tone. I was on that call last week on that Zoom presentation that I did, and Donna did a wonderful toning at the beginning of this to kind of open the circle and create this energetic field. And I found myself, I was muted, luckily, because I couldn't help myself. I was just making tones with her, and it ended up, I think we may do something together at some point because it was so beautiful. So I encourage you, if you're watching and you feel called to use your voice in any way, that's a fantastic way to move energy. And I also have the meditation for meditation and chant for anxiety. It doesn't have to be for anxiety. And that takes you through a very simple chant that can kind of introduce you to the idea of using your voice. What I like about chant, you don't have to sing to chant. It's basically just opening your mouth and making a powerful noise. But the power of the noise sometimes is what overwhelms the microphone. So we're not going to do that tonight, but I will do some toning, and if you feel called to make some noise, or if you feel like chanting at any point, by all means, I always say go with your intuition, and of course be gentle with yourself. So I'm going to take my cleansing sip of water, and I'll go ahead and start getting comfortable while I do that. Whew, got a lot in my body. This is also a really good way if you're just if you're in a place where people won't, judge you too much, or maybe you don't care because you've reached that point, but doing a little full body shake is a good way to kind of move any stagnant energy and anything that you've picked up. As I was talking about that, I think I was getting a little tense because, as I said, it's kind of a difficult subject for me, and it's something I'm still working on personally. So doing a little bit of a shake can help diffuse some of that tension and move that energy out, so you don't end up holding it and then carrying it into the next days and weeks, and then having to resolve it later as we talk about it in Wind Down Wednesday. If you can get rid of it right away, that's the goal of spiritual processing, is to step into flow. And as things come up, we just let them go, and eventually we're just completely in this beautiful state of flow. And I have not made it there, but someday maybe I will. And I am definitely flowing more than I used to. And that is progress. All right. And I just started talking again. Okay. So find your comfortable position, and as always, whatever comes up for you, let it flow. If you have emotions come up, let them come out. Use the deep breathing, that nice loud sigh, that ha sound, to allow energy to flow through you as you feel emotions coming to the surface. And be gentle with yourself. Let's begin, as we always do, with 3 deep breaths in through the nose, and then sigh them out. You can use that ha sound to vibrate the vagus nerve. That brings us out of that fight, flight, or freeze and into the relaxation state. Let your mind come into the present moment. Let go of everything that happened up until this moment. Let go of all the things you just heard me say, of everything that happened during the day. Just let yourself come into this flow of intuition, of joy, of presence. And let go of your thoughts of what happens after this, or what happens later tonight or tomorrow or this week. Again, step into flow here, step into presence. And as your mind wanders, as it will, just bring it back gently. Use your breathing. If you need something to focus on the sound of my voice, on the words that I'm saying, on the guidance. It comes from our collective intuitive nature, that divine guidance. Let the top of your head gently open, that crown chakra. And let that beautiful light of divine love, that unconditional love that is our divine birthright, let that love flow into your physical body now. Let it come in through the top of your head, into your brain, into your scalp, into your face and jaw. Allow your body to release tension and relax as you let that divine light and love flow into your throat and your neck and your upper shoulders. Let this beautiful love and light flow into your arms, through the upper arms and into your elbows, into your forearms, wrists, and hands. Let this flow of unconditional love continue into your chest and upper back, into your belly and your mid-back, your low belly and your low back. Allow this divine energy of light and love to flow into your hips and pelvis. Take a few extra deep breaths here and really imagine as you breathe in that you're drawing that golden light, divine love, all the way down your torso and into the hips and pelvis. And then as you breathe out, send that energy down into your legs, into the thighs. Let that light and love flow into your lower body. Let yourself love your lower body for the next few moments. Take another deep breath and draw that golden light down through your head and your torso, and this time down through your hips and thighs and into your knees. And as you breathe out, blow that energy down through the lower legs and feet into the earth. And one more time, this time take a deep breath in through the top of your head, down through your torso and your hips, your thighs and knees. Draw this breath all the way down to the lower legs and ankles and feet. And then exhale into the earth. Let go of any tension, anything that you have been carrying that's no longer necessary, that's no longer needed, with the intention that you release this energy for the highest good. Take one more deep breath into any areas of tension you still find that you're carrying. Using the same technique, drawing your breath in through the head to your area of tension and then blowing it down and out into the earth to be recycled for the highest good. Take a moment to notice how your feet are connected to the ground. Picture them in some rich, loamy soil, or perhaps in the sand of a beautiful sandy beach. Let your feet feel connected to the earth, to the ground. Maybe imagine that you're standing in a beautiful garden. If you're familiar with your energetic sanctuary, this garden is in your sanctuary. You may not have visited it before, but go there now. Your intention will draw you there. And if you're not familiar with the energetic sanctuary, just imagine the most beautiful garden. Take your shoes and socks off and stand in this soil. And as you look around, you're going to notice that there are some weeds in this garden, and we're going to weed this garden tonight. This is our garden of self-love. And all the beautiful flowers or trees, whatever's growing here, this is what we've nurtured through our journey so far, through our journey of self-love and self-acceptance and softening our judgments. Maybe your garden has no flowers, and that's okay because we're going to plant some tonight. Maybe it just looks like a weedy, sort of desolate lot, and that's perfect because you have a clean slate to start with. Let go of any judgments you have about your garden. And begin by clearing the space. If you already have flowers, then clear around the flowers. Give the soil a little bit of a turn. You can use whatever imagery you want here. But we're clearing out anything old, just like you would go in and maybe deadhead your roses or take out some old broken tree branches so that a tree can thrive and survive. And if you're not seeing any imagery, that's okay. Use your intention, use your imagination, and let your intuition speak to you here. See what your intuition is guiding you to see. Maybe you're not in a garden, maybe it's something else, and that's fine. Go with what your intuition is showing you. So notice if you're having any feelings coming up here, any resistance. Maybe you just had the thought that you don't even want to be in this garden and you want to go home, and that's okay. Soften into that feeling. Soften into any resistance you find here. And I want you to pick up one of your self-judgments. Whatever comes to you is probably what you need to focus on tonight. It might be one of the things you tell yourself the most often. And look at this judgment. It's ugly. It's not pretty. It's like a dead, it might even be like a rock. Mine looks like it, just kind of like I found this big nasty rock with some ugly looking moss on it. It's not helping my garden. This is not good moss. This is just black mold, toxic blah. and really look at this. And again, if you're not getting the imagery, that's fine. Use intention. But if you see your self-judgment here, really let yourself look at it. Really look at how gross and ugly it is, and ask yourself if this is something you want in your garden. My rock is so big I can't pick it up. Okay. It's like a giant boulder. And if it's a giant boulder, it's a good thing that we're in a meditation, because you have superhuman strength and you can pick your giant boulder up like it's nothing. You can hold it in your hand like you're a giant and it's just a tiny little pebble. Whatever you see here, however big or nasty or uncomfortable it is, look at it. Really see this judgment. And notice, like in my case, this is a huge, heavy burden. It's a huge weight that's holding me down. That's why it looks like this big, gross, ugly rock. And I don't want this in my garden anymore. I'm ready to let go of this judgment, of this self-talk that comes with this judgment. So as you're ready, as you've really looked at whatever this is, this self-judgment, this yucky thing that you don't want to keep, that you no longer want to nurture, because you're nurturing this ugly thing by allowing it to stay here, and it's stealing the vibrancy of your beautiful flowers, of this love that is your divine birthright, that is everyone's divine birthright. So pick this thing up and throw it the heck out of there. Just get rid of it. You're like Superman. You throw whatever this is, if it's a weed, if it's a rock, whatever your imagery is, or just use the intention of throwing this, launching it into the stratosphere, out of your sanctuary, off of your planet, out of your energetic field. And again, send this with the intention that it will be used for the highest good, because this energy can be transformed and recycled. And we're going to soften what's left of it with love. But initially, just get it the heck out of there. And notice how that feels. Give yourself a minute. Whew. Maybe it feels like a big relief. Maybe it feels like it's not ready to go, and that's okay. Maybe you could just take part of it and throw it away, and remember, be aware that some of it is still left. Because this is something that developed over many years. And if you can't get rid of it in one meditation, that's okay. Be gentle about that. As always, you can repeat this as many times as you need to. So this area, if your item is gone, if your weed, your rock, whatever it was, or if you still have a little piece of it left, I want you to use your hands now. Rub them together a little bit if you like. This gets your energy flowing. And as always, intention is a huge part of this. And send this divine light and love, this waterfall of joy, this energy that we tap into every week, this bliss, this neutral state of loving divine energy. Use the intention that you're sending this energy into this self-judgment, into this area of your garden that was occupied by this self-judgment. And notice how this feels in your body as you do this. I just felt a bunch of tension release. Notice how this feels emotionally. And then if you're familiar with that waterfall of joy, imagine that water now is coming straight into your body, into this garden. It's watering the flowers that are here. It's guiding you to plant new flowers of self-love, to replace self-judgment with self-love, with this divine love that we are free to open to once we are in awareness, once we can let go of this harsh judgment of ourself, we open so much more space and energy to this love. So let this love, you might picture it as a soft flowing rain. It's like some clouds picked up that joy, that water from the joy waterfall, and now they're just watering your garden just ever so gently. And let yourself stand in this flow of joy and love. Let yourself step away from that self-judgment now. Go to the most beautiful part of your garden. And if you don't see a garden, go to the place where you know you want to plant your flowers of self-love, or your trees, or whatever plants come into your mind. And notice that they grow instantly here. We're not on a physical plane. So maybe you've put some seeds in the earth here, and as this beautiful rain falls on you, this beautiful bliss and joy, this unconditional divine love that is filling your heart with joy, that's filling your garden with self-love, notice how your garden is changing just even with this short visit, with this short awareness and intentional work here in this garden. Perhaps it's completely transformed. Perhaps the other weeds are clearing out on their own. Perhaps other rocks or heavy, nasty self-judgments that are here are just spontaneously leaving. Let go of your control here and let this flow. Let whatever's meant to happen in this meditation happen. Let go even of the imagery if you like, and just allow this to happen. Allow whatever's leaving to leave. Allow this beautiful joy, this divine love, this divine connection, this golden light, this rain. Let this flow into your physical body. Let it flow into that garden, into your energetic body, your energetic sanctuary. And look around and notice how beautiful this is. This garden is you. So look around and notice how beautiful you are. And notice that even this garden is not perfect. There's still some little imperfections here and there. There's some rocks in the soil. Maybe there's still some weeds. And this is part of you. And allow the judgment that you see, that you feel, even as you see this garden, allow that to release and look at how beautiful this space is. Acknowledge how beautiful your being is. And as emotion comes up, breathe into it and let it flow. Don't tamp it down. Don't stop it. Breathe into it and let it flow. And again, look around and see how beautiful you are. See how beautiful this space is. And now bring your affirmation into this space. I am a beautiful being of divine light and love. I allow myself to be who I am without feeling the need to change anything about myself. I accept myself just as I am, and I know that I am loved. Divine love flows through me, and I freely share it with myself and others. Allow any further affirmations that come to you to come into your being. Speak them out loud. And if you're called to, you can join me with some toning as I seal this beauty, this joy into our garden, into our bodies. Let's seal this beautiful self-love gently and with joy, acknowledging our divine right to be loved, to be who we are meant to be in this physical plane during this lifetime. Soften. Soften your heart. Open your heart. Ooh. Let yourself be loved. Ooh. Let yourself be loved. You are loved. Very slowly, with love, send gratitude to this garden for holding your self-love, for holding your judgments and allowing you to release them as you're ready. Bring your awareness back into the room, into your physical body. Bringing that awareness again in through your head, down through your neck and arms, into your torso, through your chest and belly and back. Let your mind, let your awareness come back into the hips and pelvis, into the thighs and knees, to the lower legs, ankles and feet. Wiggle your toes a little bit. And affirm with me, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body. And I release my self-judgments. I invite self-love, divine connection, and joy into my body. Take one more deep breath in through the nose, sigh it out. You can move your body around a little bit. And as you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. I encourage you to repeat this meditation. I encourage you to revisit the self-talk meditation if this meditation spoke to you. I encourage you to soften into that divine love that is your birthright And you'll find as you soften into your love for yourself, into this divine connection of love, your relationships with others will change and become more loving. And that ripples out and affects the entire world. So thank you for healing yourself, because by healing ourselves, we heal the planet, we heal humanity. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and a wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.